Texas sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over George Strait's modest home, nestled near the outskirts of San Marcos. The rhythmic chirping of crickets announced the dusk, a melody that once brought George comfort. But tonight, the sounds felt far away, drowned out by the weight of solitude. Seated on the edge of his well-worn couch, he stared blankly at the flickering television screen, its light a stark contrast to the growing shadows in his heart. It had been 3 years since his wife Norma had left this world. 3 years filled with echoes of laughter, warm embraces, and late-night duets, now replaced by an unrelenting silence. He had tried to fill the void with music, but the notes became tangled with grief, strumming only sorrow instead of joy. The guitar sat in the corner of the room, untouched, gathering dust like old memories he couldn't bear to confront. Each day felt like a slow march through a fog of despair, and he could no longer recognize the man he once was. Glancing at the coffee table, George noticed an envelope peeking out from beneath a pile of bills. It was unremarkable, brown and unadorned, yet it seemed to pulse with a silent urgency. His heart quickened as he reached for it. An unfamiliar hope flickered inside him, questioning whether this simple letter could hold any significance in his heavy world. He carefully peeled it open, hands trembling slightly as he withdrew the folded paper within. The handwriting was neat and deliberate, striking a chord of familiarity that warmed his soul despite the chill of loneliness. It was a letter from Padre Juan, a priest who had been a constant presence in the community, known for his caring heart and unwavering faith. George had heard of him, of the kind man who had prayed for everyone, often leaving solace in troubled hearts. "Dear George," it began, "though we have never met, I feel a bond with you that cannot be explained. Since the loss of your beloved Norma, you have been a shadow in our town, a spirit unheard. But I want you to know that I have prayed for you every day. Your music does not go unnoticed. It has brought comfort to many, including myself." As he read, George's heart tightened. Could it be true? Had his songs really touched anyone during this time when he felt so utterly disconnected? The realization that someone had been watching over him, silently hoping for him to find peace, stirred a mix of confusion and longing. The feelings were so foreign, yet so deeply needed. "Music, dear George, is a divine gift," the letter continued. "It has the power to heal wounds we often think are beyond mending. I believe you still have a song to sing, a melody waiting to rise from the ashes of your grief. If you're willing, I would be honored to meet you." As the final words sank in, George leaned back, the letter trembling slightly in his grasp. With the setting sun bathing the dim room in hues of orange and deep purple, he felt an unfamiliar stirring, like the first breath of wind before a storm. He closed his eyes, imagining the possibility of meeting Padre Juan. Could he truly find solace in the presence of a stranger? Hope wrestled with the chains of doubt that had bound him for so long. The idea that someone could believe in his renewal stirred something within him, a soft whisper against the roar of despair. In that moment, the silence within him felt slightly less overwhelming. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a beginning, a soft echo of forgiveness, a chance to rediscover purpose in the ashes of his pain. George set the letter back on the table with a determined exhale. Perhaps there was still a song waiting to be born, a melody longing to break free beneath layers of heartache. As dusk surrendered to night, an ember of hope ignited in his chest, a prayer unspoken, echoing louder than any song he had ever sung. The sun rose lazily over Texas the next day, spilling warm light through the kitchen window, but George didn't notice. He was lost in the hazy fog of memories, the letter from Padre Juan still tucked away in his pocket. It felt heavier there with each passing moment, pressing against him like a weight both comforting and harrowing. As he wandered into the dimly lit living room, the memories began to surface unbidden. The walls, lined with photographs, seemed to pulse with life. The captured laughter, the joyous moments, and the warmth of family dinners around the oak table. George paused by one photograph in particular, a candid shot of him and Norma, smiles wide and genuine, their lives intertwined in that spark of joy. They were young, vibrant, the world full of promise. In those early years, they had shared everything. Music had been their heartbeat, their way of engaging the world. They would spend evenings on the back porch, the sun dipping low while George strummed his guitar, and Norma sang along, her voice a honeyed balm that soothed every wound. They would talk about everything, dreams of a family, of travels, of the music they aspired to create. "George, you know what I've always believed." Norma's voice echoed in his mind, melodic and bright. "Music is like prayer, a way to connect to something greater than ourselves. When you sing, you share a piece of your soul." He could almost hear her laughter blending with the notes that floated into the evening air. Those dinners had been lively, filled with family discussions, love, and the occasional joking argument over whose turn it was to do the dishes. Their home had always been adorned with faith, a small cross over the mantel, whispers of gratitude before meals, and the nighttime ritual of prayer before sleep. It had all felt effortless back then, woven into the very fabric of their lives, until grief pulled everything apart. Now, as the sun climbed higher, George's heart sank deeper. How had the vibrant colors of their existence dulled into such a somber palette? The silence had thickened around him like a fog. After Norma's passing, he had stopped singing, stopped performing. It was as if his voice had been swallowed by the darkness. The glimmers of light that had once guided him through life had dimmed to nearly nothing. Restlessly pacing the room, he caught sight of the guitar again, half hidden in the shadows. It felt like an old friend, longing for attention. He approached it tentatively, as if anticipating a wound or storm. The wood felt cool under his fingers, and without thinking, he plucked a few strings, the familiar sound bringing a wave of nostalgia crashing over him. The soft notes filled the room, and for a fleeting moment, he was transported back to those simpler times where every beat felt alive. Caught in the reverie, he suddenly felt an urgency. The recognition of his own isolation triggered something profound within. The recollections of laughter, love, and song had created a longing so palpable it seemed to fill the air. Perhaps the letter's message wasn't just empty words. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to rekindle the music, a way to honor Norma's memory, a way to push through the heavy veil of sorrow shrouding him. He sank into the couch with the guitar held close. As he strummed the strings gently, it was not just music that came forth. It was a whisper of hope for something more profound. The pain was there, but so were the echoes of joy and love. He closed his eyes, drifting back into the moments they had spent filling each other's worlds with dreams and music. Images swirled around him, the two of them dancing in the living room, children playing at family gatherings, peaceful evenings spent under stars. These were the foundation of who he was, what he once believed in. He was more than the grief that had come to define him. He was a man who had loved deeply and could still offer love to the world. For the first time in a long while, George felt the weight of the letter lift. Hope blossomed in his chest, nudging at him to reach out, to seek connection, not just for himself, but to embrace those who had been touched by his music. With determination, he sat up straighter, strumming a few chords, allowing the melody to spill forth. He felt tentative at first, blending fragments of chords, but then something shifted. The music began to weave itself together, a soft emergence from the depths of his heart, a fragile flower breaking through the surface of barren soil. Gradually, as the morning rolled on, George refocused on the strum, pouring his soul into the notes, allowing his heart to release the tenderness that had long been bottlenecked within. The song that took shape felt alive, intertwined with threads of laughter, tears, memories, and the haunting presence of loss. It was a testament to his journey, each note enshrining the love he had shared with Norma. As he played, the sun cascaded through the window, illuminating the dust motes that danced around him, bathed in golden light. There was a beauty in this moment, a quiet reminder of life's resilience, a whisper of redemption waiting to unfold. Finally he paused, taking a deep breath, letting the final chords resonate in the air. Maybe it was time to reach out to Padre Juan, to explore this connection he had felt lingering like an unstrummed chord. With a heart full of echoes of the past mingling with whispers of hope, George knew he was ready to embrace the next step. Days rolled together like the Texas hills, vibrant yet shadowed by George's continued isolation. He found brief respite in his guitar, each strum calling back distant memories of joy and laughter. Yet even with the familiar comfort of music, the darkness that clouded his spirit remained unrelenting, a constant reminder of the void left by Norma's absence. One overcast afternoon, George decided to venture out to the local diner, a place he had once cherished for both its comfort food and its lively atmosphere. Now it felt like a ghost of his former life. He pushed open the heavy door, the jingling bell above announcing his arrival in a stark and quiet tone. Taking a seat at the counter, he fiddled with his hands, gaze wandering aimlessly over the menu, the words blending together like the thoughts swirling in his mind. "George, it's been a while." A voice pierced through his solitude. It was Elena, his dedicated manager, whose smile always seemed to cut through the clouds that enveloped him. "Hey, Elena," he replied, forcing a smile in return. "Yeah, I guess I've just been away." Elena settled into the seat across from him, her expression shifting from cheerful to concerned. "You're missed, you know. Your songs more than just entertain, they heal. It's hard seeing you shut yourself away from everything." George lowered his gaze, shame creeping up as he stared into his half-empty coffee cup. "Sometimes I feel like I don't have anything worth sharing anymore." Elena leaned in, her voice a soothing balm over his self-doubt. "You need to stop talking like that. Grief is a journey, not a destination. It's important to climb that mountain, to seek out the light again. Think about that letter from Padre Juan. He's reaching out to you for a reason." Her words tugged at him, awakening a small flutter of hope intertwined with a heavy fear. "I want to reach out, but what if indulging in this vulnerability only leads to more hurt?" "You won't know until you take a step, George," she urged gently. "Your fear is natural, but facing it could lead you to something beautiful. You haven't sung in so long. You have to reconnect with your music and, through it, reconnect with yourself." He considered her words, feeling the yearning for companionship and creativity stir beneath the layers of grief. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed a napkin and a pen, writing down the number from Padre Juan's letter. Each stroke felt powerful, a breaking of chains bound by his sorrow. As he finished, Elena placed her hand over his. "Just call him. You have to start somewhere." With resolve, George stood up from the table, his heart pounding, but he also felt a sense of liberation. He stepped out of the diner into the open air, letting the sun filter through the clouds, illuminating the path ahead. Shadows still danced around him, yet they felt less suffocating than before. The potential for light was beginning to glimmer through the darkness. That evening, he buried himself in thoughts of what lay ahead. The guitar rested in his lap, untouched for too long. The calming beauty of the sunset filled his small living room, casting warm hues that reflected the flickers of hope struggling against the coldness in his heart. His mind replayed the memories of glimmering laughter and sweet melodies, reigniting the longing that had too long been silenced. Finally, as twilight settled over the world, George picked up his guitar. The moment his fingers brushed the strings, he was transported back to simpler times, where music drifted from his fingertips like whispers in the wind. He began to play softly, the gentle notes rising and falling, each chord reminding him of both solitude and connection, loss and love. The song began to form, a ballad of memories intertwined with longing and a fragile acceptance of the present. It was raw, layered with emotion, each note a step through the grief that had plagued him. The melody pulsed with life, embodying not just the weight of his sorrow but the flicker of hope. He sang softly, his voice resonating through the emptiness of his home, filling the space where echoes of despair had lingered too long. As he played, he dared to think about what lay beyond the music. Maybe confronting his pain was the beginning of healing. Maybe reaching out to Padre Juan wasn't just about facing fear, but about rediscovering the warmth of connection that grief had obscured. With shaking hands, he reached for the phone, taking a deep breath to steady the fluttering in his chest. The call would be a bridge between the life he had known and a new beginning. He placed the call, letting the numbers ring through. "Hello, Padre Juan?" His voice felt tentative but alive. "This is George Strait. I received your letter and, well, I would love to meet you." As they spoke, and the warmth of understanding bathed him, George caught a glimpse of the path unfolding, a path filled with the promise of healing, connection and music, the possibility of loving life again. The weight of loneliness was still there, but he felt the stirrings of his spirit awakening, buoyed by the tender realization that hope could take root again. The days that followed George's call to Padre Juan felt different, imbued with a new sense of purpose. A gentle optimism fluttered in his chest, forging a path from the depths of grief toward renewed life. Each morning he rose with the sun, feeling drawn to his guitar, the strings translating his emotions into melodies that rang through the hollow corners of his heart. On the day of their meeting, the sun broke through the clouds with an inviting brightness, igniting a hope that warmed him from within. He dressed with care, choosing a simple shirt that made him feel at ease, and as he stepped outside, the air was thick with the scent of blooming wildflowers, This felt like the start of something vital, a rebirth. When he arrived at the church, the sturdy wooden doors welcomed him, beckoning him inside. The familiar scent of polished wood and a faint hint of incense filled the space. George took a moment to breathe deeply, grounding himself before entering the sanctuary of community and faith. He discovered Padre Juan seated in a cozy nook, his presence radiating warmth and compassion. "George, I'm so glad you could come," the priest beamed, his smile bright against the backdrop of soft light filtering through stained glass. "I appreciate you meeting with me, Padre," George replied, settling into the chair across from him. It was time to peel back the layers of hurt and find clarity in the shared silence. Eager to listen, Padre Juan invited George to share his thoughts, gently encouraging him. The words flowed like a river breaking through a dam. "It's hard for me to confront my grief. Losing Norma felt like losing part of myself," he confessed, voice shaky but earnest. "Your love for her is evident, George. Grief often feels heavy because it's intertwined with the love we carry. Let it guide you, don't bury it," the priest advised, the kindness in his tone wrapping around George like a comforting shawl. "Music was our bond, our life," George said, his heart aching at the memories. "Without her, it lost its meaning. Perhaps by sharing your journey, you can transform that pain into healing, not just for yourself but for others who have experienced loss," Padre Juan suggested, igniting a flicker of determination within George. "Your songs can bring people together." George felt the warmth of understanding enveloping him, dissolving the walls he had built around his heart. With every conversation, he connected deeper with both the priest and himself, recognizing that music could reclaim its role in his life. He acknowledged the depth of his intimacy with the songs and their ability to tell his story. They ended the meeting with a prayer, and as George stood to leave, Padre Juan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Remember, you're not alone, George. Allow your faith to carry you forward." Exiting the church, a renewed sense of purpose surged within him. The world felt brighter, full of possibilities. During the drive home, he found himself humming a melody that had been lingering at the edges of his mind. The spirit of renewal blossomed in each note, intertwined with the promise of shared experiences. When he arrived at home, eagerness filled him. The guitar, rested across his lap, called out, urging him to write. With the evening sky settling into shades of gold and violet, he began to strum. Each chord resonated with the weight of his emotions, unfurling like a flower blooming anew. The song took shape, an anthem of love, loss, and resilience. As he played, he felt both vulnerable and powerful. Vulnerable, surrendering to the depths of memory and grief, and powerful, reclaiming his voice against the silence of sorrow. The captured notes enveloped him, creating an atmosphere of healing and catharsis. Days turned to weeks, and with his spirit rekindling, George piled the songs up in the corners of his thoughts. Each piece became a tribute to Norma, a testament to love enduring beyond loss. He decided it was time for a concert, a heartfelt gathering where he could capture the essence of his journey and connect with both old friends and new faces. On the night of the concert, the venue buzzed with anticipation. Friends and fans alike filled the room, eager to connect with George's music, the shared heartbeat of their community. As he stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause, enveloping him in warmth. With a deep breath, George positioned the guitar beneath his fingers, feeling the wood and metal remind him of the countless hours spent crafting music. He began strumming the first song, the heartfelt tribute that flowed effortlessly from his fingertips. The room fell silent, hearts holding their breath, ready to embrace and treasure the revival of life through music. As the evening played out, George lost himself in each note, each lyric sharing pieces of his journey, the struggle against despair, the power of love and the beauty of rebirth. The audience hung on every word, their emotional connection palpable, a vast exchange filling the air like electricity. When he reached the last song, an emotional ballad of hope and healing, the room held its breath. George sang with authenticity, pouring every ounce of feeling into the performance, channeling both his pain and powerful love. As he concluded, the silence was broken by thunderous applause mingled with shouts of appreciation and love. Stepping off the stage, tears glistening at the corners of his eyes, George was embraced by familiar faces eager to reconnect. Each hug reminded him that he was not isolated anymore. The concert had rekindled a web of connections, illuminating the spaces left dark by grief. With the warmth of community surrounding him and the echoes of heartfelt melodies still lingering in the air, George knew he was walking the path of healing. Music wasn't just a refuge, it was a bridge, a means of connection and understanding that transcended the depths of sorrow. As he basked in the afterglow of the concert, George realized that through every note he had been transformed. The spirit of love and music would carry him forward, steady against the storms of life. With hope ignited in his heart, he embraced his journey ahead, grateful for the music that would forever weave his story together. In the glow of the post-concert atmosphere, George felt the fragility of his newfound connection glowing like a lantern in the night. Friends gathered around him, voices blending into a symphony of laughter, congratulations, and shared memories. For the first time in a long while, he felt the weight of loneliness lift, replaced by a sense of belonging that resonated in his heart like his beloved guitar. After the concert, Elena approached him, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "You were incredible tonight. The crowd loved every moment. You have such a unique gift, George." "It felt, I don't know, like coming home," he replied, his voice soft but full of gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself." Elena smiled gently, seeing the flicker of hope igniting in him. "This is just the beginning. Keep writing, keep sharing. Your music has the power to heal, not just for you, but for everyone who hears it." As the night became a memory, George was left with more than just the echoes of applause. He was armed with a renewed sense of purpose to develop his talent, embracing the music as a conduit for expression and healing. But even as friends gathered around, the past crept back into his mind, a shadow lurking at the edges of his happiness. In the days that followed, he found himself remembering the times with Norma, her laughter, the way she made even the simplest moments feel extraordinary. Yet a lingering ache bubbled to the surface, the unspoken words of forgiveness that he had yet to confront, not just for himself, but also for the love he had lost. Sitting on the porch one evening, his guitar resting on his knee, he allowed himself to ponder the weight of his regret. The task of sharing his heart in melody had unearthed memories he hadn't anticipated, strains of guilt for the things left unsaid and unresolved between them. He lifted his gaze to the stars twinkling in the Texas night, whispering into the vastness, "What if I had done things differently?" The stillness of the universe listened, leaving him feeling both exposed and liberated. Perhaps the path to healing included forgiving himself, acknowledging that tragedy sometimes intertwined with life's unpredictability. A few days later, with a tentative resolve, George called Padre Juan once again. "Can we talk? I think I need to revisit some things, to seek understanding, perhaps. I want to forgive myself and others." "Of course, George. Healing is a journey, and I'm here for you," the priest replied, his voice a steady anchor. They met again at the church, the soft light bathing the space in a serene glow. As George shared his heart, he felt the heaviness of regret laid bare. "There are moments I wish I could change," he admitted. "Times when I didn't show her how much she meant to me. I thought I had forever." Padre Juan nodded thoughtfully, encouraging him to explore these feelings further. "You loved Norma deeply, and that love is a beautiful gift, regardless of the paths taken. To forgive yourself is to embrace the reality that you are human, imperfect. It's all right to have regrets, but don't let them define you." Their conversation unfolded like a deep tapestry, woven from the threads of understanding. George began to acknowledge the fragile beauty of love intertwined with loss. He realized that while grief could be isolating, forgiveness could bring a gentler clarity, a softer light to illuminate the darker corners where guilt resided. As the days turned into weeks, George delved into songwriting, infusing his journey of forgiveness into his music. The process became cathartic. Every chord struck seemed to dissolve a little more of the weight he'd carried. He wove lyrics that explored both longing and the journey toward embracing the unwritten futures. The stories he created were not merely cathartic outpourings. They resonated with truths shared by others, navigating similar paths of pain and hope. During one particular late-night writing session, the air heavy with inspiration and vulnerability, George penned a song titled "Wings of Forgiveness." The chorus spoke of releasing the memories that haunted him, allowing love to transform rather than constrict. The words poured out like a gentle stream, each verse reflecting his growth, melding sorrow with acceptance. Soon after the song's completion, Elena suggested they collaborate on an album showcasing George's work. These songs tell a story, your story. They deserve to be shared, to resonate with anyone who's ever loved and lost. With a mix of excitement and hesitance, George agreed, recognizing that the time had come to let go of his fears surrounding performance. The recording sessions unfolded naturally, each song unfurling a piece of his soul. With each note captured and each track layered, George felt his spirit lifting, buoyed on the wings of acceptance. One sunny afternoon, as they sat in the studio, George shared his song, Wings of Forgiveness, with the producers and musicians. He poured every ounce of his heart into the performance, his voice carrying the fragility of a memory turned into melody. As the last note faded into the air, silence enveloped the room before the sound of applause filled the studio. "That was incredible!" Elena exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with admiration. "You've transformed so much through this process." Feeling vulnerable, George absorbed the encouraging energy in the room. "I just wanted to share, to let go, and to heal." The album was released a few weeks later, dedicated to Norma, a celebration of their love and a tribute to the journey of forgiveness. The response from fans and fellow musicians was overwhelming. Messages poured in, sharing stories of loss and love, resonating deeply with the messages in his music. As George read through the heartfelt responses, he recognized a profound connection weaving through the fabric of life. He was not alone. The universality of love and loss resonated in the hearts of many. Each shared experience was a thread connecting humanity, a reminder that through vulnerability came strength. One evening, celebrating the success of the album with friends and family gathered, George felt a sense of closure and renewed purpose. He reflected on his journey, through grief, isolation, and finally, to a place of forgiveness. With laughter and warmth surrounding him, he raised his glass for a toast. To love, to loss, and to the beautiful journey of healing we walked together. As his friends lifted their glasses in agreement, George understood that while the road ahead might still hold challenges, he had found strength in connection, in music, and in the power of forgiveness. Underneath the stars and surrounded by those who mattered, George knew he was ready to embrace life with open arms, grateful for the journey he had traveled. His musical path was just beginning, and he was ready to soar against the backdrop of possibility, texturing his story with notes of resilience and hope along the way. In the months following the release of his album, George found himself on a transformative tour that felt both exhilarating and purposeful. Each night, he stepped onto a stage that became a sanctuary, a place where he could shed his layers of grief and embrace the healing power of music. The anticipation from the crowd ignited a spark in him. The electric energy throbbed through the air like an unspoken bond. On a crisp evening in Austin, George stood before an intimate audience, heart racing as he opened with Wings of Forgiveness. The lyrics hung in the air, and he could see the audience's faces illuminated with emotion. Here, he discovered an undeniable connection, each person uniquely navigating their own journey through love and loss. As he strummed the final chord, applause erupted, but it was during the quiet moments in between songs that most touched him. A young woman approached, tears shimmering in her eyes as she spoke. "Your song helped me after I lost my mum. Thank you." Touched by her words, he nodded, absorbing the significance of their shared moment. "I'm truly sorry for your loss. Music has a way of expressing what we can't say. We're in this together." The encounters he shared every night ignited hope in him, and he began to realize his music was becoming a beacon for others. It was a reminder that vulnerability could transform into strength. Encouraged by this newfound purpose, George sought to expand his artistry, collaborating with other musicians who also spoke from the heart. In Nashville, he joined forces with Sarah, an up-and-coming artist whose soulful voice mirrored his own emotions. As they crafted their shared ballad, Through the Fire, they merged their stories of love and healing into a cohesive melody. Working side by side, they exchanged personal experiences, allowing them to weave lyrics that starkly reflected their journeys through pain and redemption. Sarah shared her outlook on love, quietly pondering, "Pain is really just love stretched thin, isn't it?" George met her gaze, and from that stretched love, we can create something extraordinary. The collaborative effort ignited a sense of urgency within him to continue expressing these difficult yet beautiful truths. The finished song was emblematic of the emotional journey he wanted to share with the world, an anthem of resilience, As he began the promotional tour for the new album, excitement swirled in his chest. During a show in Chicago, he noted how the crowd reacted to their collaboration. People sang along, some with tears glistening in their eyes, while others smiled, lost in the melodies. Later that evening, as he wrapped up the performance, he acknowledged the profound effect of music on both him and his audience. "This is for all of us who have loved and lost," he said, feeling the tidal wave of connection sweep through the room. After wrapping up the tour, George found himself reflecting on the sheer depth of his experiences. Amid the applause and laughter, shadows of regret occasionally lingered, nudging him to reckon with the past. He recognized that true redemption awaited not just in crafting songs, but in seeking forgiveness from those he had let down. With this resolve, George began writing letters. Each message spilled his heart onto paper, recounting memories and expressing genuine remorse. He reached out to friends and family, inviting them into his journey of understanding. As replies trickled in, a healing light illuminated the dark corners of his soul. Each response felt like a soft touch, reminding him that reconciliation was not just possible, but crucial for moving forward. Renewed connections sparked like fireflies in the twilight, a constellation of relationships rekindled. Over dinner one evening with Eleanor, he shared the impact of sending those letters. "I didn't realize how much healing was tied to reconnecting," he admitted, a hint of vulnerability coloring his voice. "Sometimes we just need to be honest with each other. You're doing the hard work of reckoning, George. That's truly inspiring," she replied, her encouragement lighting up his heart. George continued to hone his songwriting, pouring emotions into his music. Each new track grew richer and more textured, more grounded in the shared stories he received from fans and loved ones alike. Performing became not just an act of expression, but a celebration of life. On stage, George transformed pain into melodies of hope, proving to himself and others that love could triumph over loss. In a pivotal moment during a concert in his hometown, he introduced a new track about forgiveness and resilience. As he strummed the opening chord, he could feel the weight of every missed opportunity echoed in the notes. He watched the audience absorb the music like a balm on their wounds, relating their experiences to his. "That's the beauty of all of this," he reflected. "We're united in our humanity. Every note played is a testament to healing together." On nights filled with high energy and joy, George savored the beautiful paradox of life. Amid heartbreak, he found joy. Among loss, he discovered love. As he continued this journey, he understood that the road to redemption was not about erasing the past, but embracing it fully. The essence of George's newfound artistic voice lay in the intertwining themes of love, loss, and forgiveness. With his music lighting the way, he was ready to continue writing the next chapters of his journey, hand in hand with those who understood the beauty that could come from embracing the complexity of life. As George stood on stage one last time for the final concert of his latest tour, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. The venue, an intimate theater filled with family, friends, and loyal fans, buzzed with anticipation. This moment felt like a culmination of everything he had been through, a celebration of resilience, healing, and the power of love. He glanced at the familiar faces in the crowd, the people who had supported him through his darkest days, friends who had shared tears and laughter alike. It was a gathering built on bonds forged in vulnerability. With a deep breath, he picked up his guitar and began the opening song, "Through the Fire," the melody ringing clear and strong, echoing the emotions tethered to his journey. As he performed, George reveled in the shared experience of music, an invisible thread weaving through the hearts of everyone present. Each note shimmered like a beacon of hope, reminding him of the lessons he had learned and the love that continued to surround him. The audience sang along, their collective voices transcending the space, creating an atmosphere radiant with authenticity and warmth. After the song wrapped up, George paused, taking a moment to absorb the energy of the room. "I want to thank you all for being part of this journey with me," he began, his voice steady, fortified by the support of those who believed in him. "Every chord I strum, every lyric I write, is a reflection of our shared stories, an incredible testament to love and healing." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and George felt his heart swell. In this moment, he realized that his life and art had come full circle. What once felt fragmented now glimmered with completeness. Music had not only been his refuge, but but also a bridge to connection, a means to navigate the complexities of existence. As the night carried on, George blended old classics with new tracks, each song allowing him to explore different facets of life: celebration, grief, love, and forgiveness. He invited Eleanor on stage to perform a duet, both of them sharing a seamless harmony that reflected their growth and friendship. In the middle of the performance, as the sounds intertwined and the lights danced around them, a profound feeling enveloped George. Love in all its forms illuminated the darkness. He understood now that the scars, painful as they were, contributed to the beauty of who he was becoming. With the final notes of the concert fading away, George took a moment to connect with the audience through unspoken understanding. He had learned to embrace life's challenges, the ebbs and flows that defined it. He pledged to continue shaping his narrative with authenticity, honoring the past while stepping boldly into the future. As he concluded the concert, the crowd erupted in applause, a sea of love washing over him. George lifted his hands in appreciation, feeling the warmth and connection intensify. In that moment, he recognized the complexity of leaving behind the hurts that once bound him, now a launching point into a new dawn. Stepping off the stage with a heart full of gratitude and hope, George felt transformed. No longer just a performer, he had become an advocate for healing through music, a guide for anyone traversing the paths of their own grief and loss. The road ahead was still unwritten, brightened with possibilities, yet it no longer felt daunting. It was a chance for growth, titled with the promise of connection. As he walked backstage, his heart settled into a rhythm much like the strumming of guitar strings. He was ready to embrace a new era of life, filled with love, understanding, and an artist's fierce determination to continue sharing the magic of music with the world. The road to redemption had neither end nor limit. It was a journey of perpetual growth. Clutching his guitar, George stepped into the bright lights, his music inviting the world to follow him on this newfound path of healing, where joy and sorrow could coexist as beautiful symphonies of the human experience, echoing into eternity.